Welcome to our panel session on St Benet's sort of past, present and future. I think we'll summarise it, but particularly look at the last decade. A couple of parish messages to start with. So you can submit questions to us using the facility in Zoom, and we'll try and take some of those at the end of our conversation, but please do that. Just to point out that this is being recorded, so obviously the pearls of wisdom that you hear will be preserved for posterity, and we'll be able to also let others who aren't here today to be able to witness everything and view everything in the coming days and weeks. And also just to point out where the fire exits are, which are wherever your front door is currently. So please do that if something unusual happens. So just quickly to set the scene for this, my name's Andrew Thomas. I'm Development Director here, and I've actually only joined in March. It was a couple of days before lockdown, and in the context of this, actually, I think the previous time that I was actually at Benet was almost exactly 10 years earlier, when I was doing the role of head of fundraising for sport at the university. I had the pleasure to interact with Father Felix Stevens, who was obviously master at the time, in and around 2009-10. Inevitably, we ended up talking about sport rather, which is probably his greatest passion in life. But that was literally the last time that I'd been in St Benet's until earlier this year. So little did I realise till joining just how much had gone on during that intervening period. So it'll be fascinating to unlock some of that as we talk now. We can find out what's been going on behind the door of number 38 in recent years, but also obviously Norham Gardens has been added to that in terms of where the college operates. So no doubt you'll all have a myriad of memories of Benet's and different perspectives. But what we've done today is bring together a panel which comprises a lay master, a wonderful prior and chaplain. We've actually got not one but two current female students, and also a female graduate as well on the panel. So I think with the exception of a chaplain, I don't think any of those components existed in 2010. So, fascinating. So I think we'll get on with exploring, all of these different perspectives. And so, we'll look at what's changed, but also very much what's remained the same about Benet. So I'm going to ask the panel to actually introduce themselves just briefly, and if I could just start with Thais, if that's okay, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Hey, hello everyone. Good morning from São Paulo, Brazil. It's good to be here. It's good to virtually see everyone, as I'm missing the place, the people. And so I did my DPhil in Egyptology. I finished this year in February. And now I'm back to Brazil. I'm a historian, and I'm currently at the University of São Paulo doing my postdoc, continuing my research about domestic space in ancient Egypt. And yeah, that's pretty much.
Thank you. Father Oswald.
Good afternoon from Ampleforth. I'm Father Oswald. I'm a monk of Ampleforth. I'm an alumnus of the Hall. I read theology in the Hall from 95 to 97, and much to my surprise, I've come back now as prior of the monastic community and chaplain to the students. And just a minor sort of correction to Andrew, there wasn't a chaplain even in 2010.
Oh, right.
There was only the monastic master who acted as everything. And those who remember Father Henry will remember just how everything that means. From the bins to being domestic bursar to being the gardener to being everything else. I'm not quite that level, but it's fantastic being back in the Hall as chaplain.
Well, I never more change than I expected or even thought. So, Poppy, you next.
Hi, I'm Poppy. I'm the current JCR president and I'm a second year historian.
Very good. And Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm a second year human scientist, and I'm the current access officer in the JCR.
Brilliant. And Richard, introduce yourself, but then also perhaps just go on to give us a little summary of maybe a little bit more detail on the bones of what we've just said around the change during recent years.
Thank you very much. So I'm almost the new boy on the block here, in that everybody's been here longer than me. I came from a much larger college, a huge college of 600, and knowing about St Benet's as a small, friendly place with very good food and very good company, and to come to discover that it's much more diverse than it ever was then. It's wonderful. The Vice-Chancellor always says that St Benet's is rather like the old university used to be in the Middle Ages, with the small colleges, very, very strongly focused, studying, eating together, and I'm delighted to see that carries on. Well, 10 years ago, it was on one site. It was right in the centre of Oxford, next to two pubs. It was all male. It was quite strongly public school then, and strongly associated with certain group of schools. It was almost entirely undergraduates, I think, and there was perhaps the odd undergraduate, and possibly, I think people remember there being only 4, as to the rather a larger number now. But I think some people remember there being 14 monks, that Father Oswald will be able to confirm at one stage. It was very strongly an integrated community. And what then moved from there is that the lay masters then began to come in, and people will remember Father Henry, we had a book launch recently, Father Leo, bless his soul, and Father Felix, who was certainly a man well known all over Oxford. But in came then Master Werner Jean, who started the change that we'll be talking about in a moment, the major changes which we're seeking to carry on.
Thank you, Richard. It would have been interesting to see what they'd made of Zoom in the 12th century or whatever. But I think we feel proud of ourselves that we've succeeded, and we're all in front of you here in cyber world. Oswald, perhaps you could just add to that in terms of what you've observed in terms of change.
It's almost unrecognisable from when I was a student here myself. As I say, back in the mid to late 90s. As Rich has just said, there were 14 monks when I was resident here first time around. In my time as prior, we've been a community of between 3 and 5, which is a different experience. The number of undergraduates has risen, so that we now have a smaller selection of subjects. So we're concentrated on subjects which actually speak well to each other: classics, history, PPE, theology and philosophy, and Oriental studies. And then a couple of years ago, we introduced human sciences, which is largely biology plus psychology plus genetics. And Rachel will correct me, I'm sure, but that's sort of what it is. So there's subjects that relate to each other quite well. Certainly in my time, there were 2 or 3 graduate students, mostly monastic or religious, and the graduate population has expanded hugely. It was 3 or 4, it's now nearly 40, and that's been a huge enrichment, I think, to everybody, not only to the undergraduates, but also to the fellows. There is a fellows body. That's another change from my time. Really, there was only Father Henry and one other senior monk. And then there were a few people who came in fairly regularly. There were guest fellows who came to do some study and research. But to have a proper fellows body and directors of studies in the hall has really changed the nature of our approach to the academic life in the hall. Beautifully, I mean, wonderfully. I think the students today are incredibly lucky compared to this. It wasn't hit and miss, and we got some incredibly good teaching, but it all seemed a little bit on the back of an envelope and on a shoestring, which sometimes Benet still feels a little. But and then I said already, Father Henry is the master of everything. One of the huge helps, I think, to the hall as an institution, without changing its community aspect at all, has been the gradual professionalisation of the hall, so that we have a hall administrator, we have a senior tutor, we have a hall bursar, we have Andrew as development director, which is a major step forward, and Christine as the Master's PA and alumni coordinator. So those extra people who helped to sort of build the relationships, not only to our community within the hall itself, but also actually to the outside world, and to the world of the university. Richard has done a huge amount following Father Felix and Father Leo to build those relationships with the university in a really wonderful, wonderful new way that certainly wasn't the case when I was a student here. It's a very positive, vibrant, sort of flourishing hall.
Fantastic, and obviously one of the key features now, certainly compared to that time, is fantastic women that are involved and studying, and also have studied in the past as well. So, Thais, I almost think you're almost an entire panel in one person, actually, in that obviously, yes, a woman, graduate, and as I just discovered a few moments ago, you're actually a blue as well. So maybe just give us some of your reflections on being pretty much in the vanguard of women at Benet. So
well, it was very terrifying in the beginning. I remember when I was invited to visit Benet for my interview. There were just, guys all over the place, and Mary Marshall, Francis Reynolds, and Santa, who was the senior tutor at the time, they received me for lunch, and it was wonderful. Despite the fact we were just, a small group of women, it was very welcoming, very friendly. And as soon as we started, we were at the time 16 grad students, and it was such a vibrant community. The girls, because we were the first ones, we are very connected, very supportive to each other, very diverse as well, people from different countries, different age, different backgrounds, religious, non-religious, people from with very different experience. I remember very well how my husband felt in the first day we went to Benet, because we were a bit concerned. We were married, we were a bit older than everyone else, and it was amazing how much the community embraced the partners as well. And my husband Giuliano also knew with Defaf was another grad student at the time, so it was a very special experience. And to be fair, as women we felt very much as part of Benet. We didn't feel this separation very much. We were of course addressing issues. We need to be more represented. We need some changes in the structure of the hall because women were there, but also the way students, the staff, everyone was so engaged in welcoming us and make us feel very comfortable as part of the community, not as women in Benet, as we were a bit scared at the beginning. So it was very natural, and I think everyone embraced the idea very well. Werner was a key person to make this welcoming environment, and I felt very, very special. And it's a bit weird to be the first, for a lot of stuff, but I think we managed pretty well.
Well, we're winding on a short time, and already the population now is pretty much 50-50 in terms of gender. So Poppy, do you still feel like you're in some kind of vanguard scenario, or does it all feel very natural? What's it like for a female student these days?
It does feel very natural, I think. So sometimes there are sort of jokes about what old Benet's was like before there were women, and it does definitely feel like a completely different world. And I think that now I don't think of Benet's as being this kind of peculiarity with the sort of the first women or anything like that. It feels very much an integral part of the Benet's community, and I think we're also moving forward in terms of representation, and we're doing things like degendering the handbook and the constitution and things like that, and really moving forward to open it up and make it as inclusive a space as possible. And I think that Thais, as being one of the first women, has really paved the way for Bennett's to kind of embrace lots more firsts.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Are you meaning firsts as in academic attainment, or?
Well, that as well, and sort of first, front runners, vanguards in the community aspect as well.
Mm. No, indeed. And Rachel, what would your impressions be as well, or observations?
Well, I think it's the same thing. Like, I wouldn't have noticed before, like, coming to Bennett's, that just like, I'm not sure how many years, but just a few years before, there wasn't any women there. And I also think it's actually a really, really good community for women in Bennett's, because Bennett's tries so hard to be inclusive for women. So they're actually more, every time you do have an issue, they're much receptive to hear it. And there's a really strong women's community in Bennett's, that like we do like women's Chinese and things like that. So there is a lot more concern over the welfare of women in Bennett's, which I don't think other colleges have, because Bennett's has such a recent history of not having women. So I think in a way it's almost gone the other way, that it's actually really, really good for listening to women's concerns in the college.
Absolutely. And we actually have a 50-50 gender split amongst the chaplaincy, don't we, Oswald? So
yes, of course. Yeah, we appointed a female assistant lay chaplain in January, who has been an absolute godsend, not only in terms of supporting the prayer life and the community life of the hall, but actually sort of the technology when we went into lockdown. I mean, she's been amazing. And herself an Oxford graduate. It's been a real asset. And we were copying there the model of the Catholic chaplaincy, which had been running well for 10, 12 years. And I'm very pleased to see how well it's running with us. Just one tiny thing that might amuse people. One of my abiding memories of the last year of boy intake, as it were, as opposed to girl intake, was the games of touch rugby on the top floor, where quite often at the middle of the night you'd be woken up to find there's a crowd of guys in the middle of a scrum on the top floor throwing a rugby ball backwards and forwards. The last time I saw a game of touch rugby was 3 girls in the back garden almost trying to break the chapel windows. So I think that tells you something about inclusivity in Bennett's, that touch rugby hasn't disappeared.
Revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like we're going to pick up on this later on, but actually, Richard, despite the modest size of Bennett's, we perform disproportionately in terms of sport, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many colleges have had two blues in rugby blues? How many had won the rugby sevens 2 years in a row, as we have? We also ran one of the soccer cuppers. It is, and which college of our size could put out 3 boats? It does strike me that it's quite remarkable. It's an illustration of how people participate. All, of course, fighting fit on the very fine food that's offered. But it is a key feature, and I wonder whether Father Oswald will know whether it always has been. The sporting side has always been a key feature, but it's very pronounced now. And it's interesting how people, at what proportion, participates in university as well as college sport.
I couldn't give you facts and figures, Richard, and I'd hesitate to do so, but certainly I think the slightly larger numbers, both of undergraduates and certainly of graduate students, has helped us tremendously to be more involved in the university, and therefore more involved in the university sport, as well as music, as well as theatre, in which we also have a lot of people who participate, and at a very high level. But I think that the sporting thing, certainly, I mean, the boat has always been, certainly since the 80s, has been a major feature of the hall's life. And as you say, to be able to put out sort of 2 men's boats and a female boat, or sometimes a mixed boat, has been extraordinary, and a huge privilege to be able to bless the new women's boat last year. Just a pity we weren't allowed on the river at all. Hope and pray that turns around sometime soon. But,
no, absolutely.
Andrew, one of the points about Norham, because of course a lot of the people listening won't have ever been to Norham Gardens, or they might have tried to climb in and out of LMH. But what the Norham Gardens is where we put all our freshers there, and all the freshers also have their own library there, so that there's an opportunity to study in rather fine Victorian drawing rooms turned into libraries. It does mean that some of the teaching is done there, some of the tutorials. It also means that they have a attractive garden very close to the parks, and it's one of the nicest places in Oxford to live, which I think has been, and it creates, I think, Poppy, you might say, a very good sense of community, having the whole cohort of freshers present together.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I think it brought us closer together as a year group, and I think it kind of helped, because I think Oxford, or going into university life in general, can be a real shock to the system, but you were very much together with 24, 25 other people that were experiencing the same thing as you, and I really appreciated that and felt very kind of nurtured by that really tight community feel. And then obviously in the St Giles building, that community continued, so I think it's been really good.
Well, just to complete our look at what's changed over the last decade, I mean, we've already heard about it in terms of the graduate population. So, Thais, seeing as you're our sole representative from that community, what would you say in terms of your experience around being a graduate of Bennett's and the community around that?
I think it's been wonderful, because so much happened when I was in Bennett's, and I think the big thing was Norham Gardens, and especially for grads, because we have a working space, we have a graduate study room, and we are allowed to leave our books, our research material there, and it became very much a community on its own. We had tea breaks together. We share agonies about research, joys about chapters concluded, and so everyone who was working there actually was very close and managed to be very supportive to each other. And it's a great place to work. I know people from other colleges, and every time they heard Bennett's had a graduate study room, they were absolutely jealous. And I have to say, especially in Egyptology, because that was the place where Professor Griffith lived, and he was the father of Egyptology in Oxford. So it has, multiple meanings. And I think that the college is being great with grads regarding support, especially in welfare. Grad students go through a lot during their time in Oxford if they stay 1 year, 3, or I don't know, more sometimes. But the way Bennett's managed to give us a special attention regarding, mental health, study support, everything. I think we were very privileged to be there while these changes happened, and actually we were able to address some of the changes grad students needed at the time. So I think we were very lucky.
Thank you. So if that's a summary, hopefully for all of you, of absolutely what's changed over the last decade, I think it's important for us to have a look at what stayed exactly the same. So, if you walked in through the door of Bennett's, like I hope you all will, certainly post-COVID, then what are you going to find? And there's a huge number of things that actually do remain the same. So, Rachel and Poppy, as current students at the moment, what are the kind of traditions that students appreciate, absorb, and have actually, are playing their part in perpetuating? What would you say?
I think the common table actually is a really, really important part of the Bennett's community. I think when I found that that was something, that everybody ate at the same table, which was so different to other colleges, I really felt like that was something really special. And I think it does help to create this cross-year group community, and kind of the lay religious sort of intermingling and things like that, and it just really sort of solidifies that kind of college spirit that I think you just don't get in some of the larger ones, where it's a lot more separated. So I think the common table is something that sort of helps to continue that community feeling.
Mm-hmm. And are your guests, if you have guests in, are they particularly impressed by that?
Yeah, they are, and I think there's a real sort of homeliness about it, and people feel like they can have conversations. And the guests that I brought didn't feel awkward or sort of in any way imposing. They were really welcomed in by everyone, and I think that really helps that extension of the welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rachel, what would you observe?
Well, I think the thing that always remains constant in Bennett's is dinner time, and that the common table, but also things like the Latin prayer beforehand and the reading of the Order of Saint Benedict. Like beforehand, when I read about this happening at dinner, because I'm not a religious person, I was quite it was quite a confusing concept for me. But then leaving Bennett's, it becomes part of the tradition there, and it's not just part of like the Benedictine faith, it's part of your traditions being at Bennett's, and it's part of what makes it home is having those traditions at dinner every time, and that even though you spend most of the day at different places in Oxford, got different essays due, you go and have dinner like every night with people in different years, and you're not just talking about your academic studies with tutors, you're talking about what your stresses are, how was your day being, what are you happy about that day. And I think that's part of what makes Bennett so much different from other colleges, is that not just are you talking to tutors and people in different years, you're talking to them in such an informal way that it makes it really homely for students.
Mm. No, that's terrific. Father Oswald, I mean, there's obviously touching there on the Benedictine ethos and common table. How do you think that ethos is sort of reflected in life at Bennett's today, and how do you think it meshes with that sort of multi-faith and nun position of the hall, which obviously Rachel's just illustrated?
I think there's a number of things. I mean, I think one of the things that Poppy's already mentioned is that sense of welcome, which is always something that is particularly characteristic of us as Benedictine communities. I mean, Benedict in the rule says that we should welcome all guests as if they were Christ. And we extend guests not only to be the people that come to share dinner with us or share prayer in the chapel, but equally the new students. I mean, I hope they would feel that they were welcomed as if they were someone so incredibly special that sort of we wanted to be part of our community. Equally, that sense that the rule and prayer is part of just the normal pattern of each day in the hall. We don't stuff it down people's throats, but it's just part of the fabric of the building. I mean, it is what we do. Prayer in the chapel is as it was in, for as long as the halls existed. It is the sort of backbone of everything that we do. One of the beautiful things that happened, and we've been trying to get this off the ground for a little while, but last year in particular, 2 of our Muslim students asked if they could use the chapel for their daily prayers at the time when the monks weren't in. So it's now become, and that we haven't moved the Blessed Sacrament or taken crucifixes down or taken the statue of Our Lady away. They were more than comfortable to leave everything there. And quite a number of times I've gone in and found students just spending time in the chapel in silence, or just reflecting, or just spending a little bit of quiet time to think and to reflect themselves. So it's a bit like Benedictine life always is. You don't stuff it down people's throats. You invite people in and help them to make the best of it. And I think one of the things which I particularly enjoyed with Thais was the little interfaith group that we started a few years ago, the sort of listening together, which we've been trying to get back off the ground, but COVID got in the way. We're open to students of every faith or none to share basically our human faith experience in a very open, a very caring, empathetic way, without trying to sort of convert each other to Islam or convert each other to Hinduism or convert each other to Catholicism. Although, I mean, you can't move in the hall for crucifixes and pictures of the Abbey and the things that just make the place what it is. So from that sense, I think one of the things because our Benedictine tradition is so old and so strong, it naturally is good at welcoming people of different faiths to ask questions, to welcome people of no faith to ask questions, and ask, why are there these bizarre old men wandering around in black dresses all the time? What does that mean in the 21st century? And that's a great way to start a conversation. One of the nicest things that happened over COVID, I think, well, two things. One of the students, one of our finalists, commented that whenever he sat down to dinner with his family, he knew there was something missing because there was no reading from the rule. And less the Latin grace, but the reading of the rule. And actually the bursars picked that up. And so all the way through last term, we had a volunteer group, students, alumni, staff families, you name it, everybody chipped in. And we read the entire rule from beginning to end, and it was put up on the JCR webpage each evening, and the tradition continues. So I think it goes deep.
Absolutely. Richard, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that. It's probably quite a hard act to follow there, but
sorry, Mike.
No, but thinking when we were trying to work out how we would cope with last term, which was, of course, with virtually everybody was sent away into the outer darkness, and we had to keep the show on the road during Trinity term online at a distance. The key things to maintain were precisely the contact, the human contact, the welfare, the reading of the rule. And then every Tuesday there would be a talk, and so we made sure there was a talk every Tuesday, which was put online for people to join in. And there were research seminars, which people also were able to join in. So we kept as much going as we possibly could, even though we didn't have what otherwise would be called the real presence of everybody around with us. I thought that was very important to maintain that. And of course, although we haven't had be able to keep the sport going, I think that that still performs an important element of community amongst the various sports people who stay in contact with each other, particularly Thais with her own sport, which is a peculiar Oriental form of murder called Taekwondo, which she excelled in at the university level, I think more than 1 year. The other things that perhaps we might think about is the change about the common table is that, of course, if you came to see it now, the common table would look different from where a lot of people would hear because it's bigger. Thanks to a kind gesture from one of our alumni, it is now bigger and can take 75 people, but still with that same strong sense of community and dining together. The food, I think, is even better than it was then, but I'll still be able to comment on that. I think the food is very good. And there is this strong sense of very much of hospitality, so no hierarchy. So when our students come in, they might be sitting next to the Vice-Chancellor, they might be sitting next to the Chancellor, they might be sitting next to guests from other colleges, distinguished people. That's actually a very important element, which I think everybody appreciates. It's an important element of our community. The other thing is outreach. It might seem as if we're sort of complacent and sitting on our privilege. Of course, the other key elements are the Knights of Malta, the Order of Malta, which is run from Benet, and where undergraduates get involved in soup runs, in helping the underprivileged, the homeless in Oxford. Perhaps Poppy and Rachel will be able to comment on that.
Yeah, the Order of Malta is like a great thing. I've never it's so Benet's based that so many students just come in, even if it's just one night a week or one night a term, they help at some point. And also on the JCR page, people ask, oh, would somebody mind helping, making sandwiches and things like that. So what's really great about the Order of Malta is that it really is a community effort to help people every night. And there is a personal sense of responsibility when you come into Bennett's, that if there isn't somebody serving meals, that you can be part of that and you can just show up that time and be responsible for that night. And I think that's one of the really nice things that Bennett's does, is that it really does, is very committed to the Order of Malta and what's involved in there.
Yeah, I think as well there's that sort of sense of duty and responsibility to other people in the hall with the serving of meals, and then as well to the outside community. And I think as well that is really attractive to people from outside Bennett's, and it does draw an audience from other colleges who come and help out as well. And I think that's really important, because it's sort of the link between yourself and the hall, yourself and the wider university, and yourself and Oxford as a city. Yeah, indeed. And obviously one of the limiting factors around all of that kind of work at the moment is wretched COVID. And so maybe if we just look at life, in the present moment, then clearly that's, such a huge factor, and something, as overused word about unprecedented, but it really is. Let's just, perhaps Oswald, just first of all, covering this, what kind of demands or challenges it presented for you in terms of the pastoral care of the hall during this period?
It's always much more difficult to offer the right level of pastoral care if you're not actually in the same room as someone. So we had a lot of student contacts. In some ways, it was a blessing that it was Trinity term that was hit, given that people had a strong focus on preparing for what would have been prelims or preparing for schools. Nonetheless, the fact that sort of everyone was, as Richard said, cast out into the outer darkness, did make it that little bit more difficult to give the right sort of level of care, either myself or Neve or the other people who are often involved in that. I mean, thankfully, the technology was able to step in, and I had a lot of one-to-one conversations with students who just needed a little, sometimes just even a friendly face and a different voice from mum and dad, or from teenage brothers who were not concentrating on whose GCSEs had been cancelled, so they didn't think that anyone else had exams. And the number of, I don't know how many families we saved from murder, but I think there were a fair few. And one of the things which, I mean, so much of the interaction with students is done in corridors, around the common table, bumping into each other at lunchtime, standing outside in the garden. But those day by day, little by little contacts where you see someone's face and you think, ooh, now I wonder. Or you don't see someone for a day or two and you think, oh, I wonder. And it's those things that disappear. And those things which I know that Steve, the bursar, and myself and Neve are really going to be concentrating on when we get the freshers in and the new grad students in, to try and work out how we can offer that same sort of welfare package in terms of contacts, because it's going to be much more difficult next term than it's been up till now. Ooh, Tice has got a friend.
No, sorry, Oswald.
Sorry, Karen.
No, I suppose the question to Poppy and then Rachel actually is, well, first of all, has Oswald done a good job? I'm sure he has. And secondly, just what's it been like, sort of living through it? And we're not through it yet by any sense. So almost what does next term look like from your perspective?
I think I've definitely found it quite difficult studying at home. I think it's just not the same kind of environment. I think, not being able to see lots of different people and being sort of stuck in with the same people. As Father Oswald said, it becomes very difficult and kind of wearing. So I've really enjoyed things like the reading of the rule, and I think the JCR has also adapted quite well and tried to be quite flexible in offering online stuff. We've had quizzes and things like that to kind of keep some semblance of the community together, even though we're all spread out over the place. And I think that that's definitely something that we'll take forward in the new term, because I think people appreciate it, and it's sort of, it is that home away from home that people do need sometimes. And I think it's especially important when we come back and we're together, but we're sort of still not really together because of social distancing and things like that.
Indeed. And Rachel, how's it been for you?
I think very similar experience, that being at home around people who don't understand what it's like to be in Oxford makes it very difficult because there's a different type of workload and people don't understand like what the essays are, what exactly I'm doing. But when you're in Oxford, you're surrounded around people who understand what you're going through. So that's one of the things I found most difficult. But I think that's what, like Poppy said, having putting more focus into making sure people have the opportunity to see people at Bennett's. It makes you realise, even just discussing how hard you're finding it doing it at home makes it a lot easier to, like, COVID's not easy. There's no way the hall was able to adapt to make it just the same as it was in your household as it was in Bennett's, but the way it's adapted in making sure that students still know that Bennett's is there and the people in Bennett's are there and they understand that it's difficult and they're here for you. I think that's what the hall managed to do really well in COVID times.
So we've heard there a little bit about the sort of emotional impact of COVID. Richard, in terms of the business of the hall, what are the main things that have impacted for Bennett's in recent months and sort of perhaps into the future?
One of the remarkable things is how, in Bennett's in particular, but across the university, everybody kept the teaching going. Although the libraries were all closed, and some of them, I tried to get in one recently, I have to book a fortnight ahead. So people provided library facilities. Certainly the Bennett's library, there were photocopying sections for students to be able to get access. So there's a possibility of they were able to keep the teaching going there, and the tutorials, the lectures were available online. We've had a lot of practice, and that's, I think, gone well, keeping the teaching going and the academic standards very high. We got 5 firsts this year in finals, which is remarkably good, out of 18 or 20 undergraduates. So I think it's a remarkable performance, and it's a triumph for the students themselves and for the tutors who looked after them. So that part, I think, is worked very well. As to the beginning of what we're doing for next term, I should say something about that now. I mean, the university and the hall are open for business next term. We're very upbeat that we think we've got, and the university has got, the precautions in place to keep people safe and to get the teaching going. There's going to be a mixed mode combination of as much can be done face-to-face, obviously with shielding and precautions and so on, but as much can be done face-to-face. But I think the lectures will be almost entirely online, and tutorials, we'll see, they will be certainly in early stages, people want to meet each other, but I think it might be safe, at least for the first half of term, while we see how the virus evolves, for most of that teaching, the teaching to be online, and with the hope that certainly later in the term and by after Christmas, that we will be back to something closer to normal.
Oh, thanks, Richard. Conscious I haven't asked Thais anything in recent minutes, so slightly left field question, but obviously you're down in Brazil. From a COVID perspective, how bad is it?
Oh, it's terrible here at the moment. But what I want to add to this conversation is, as someone who was leaving Bennett's, I left Bennett's just before the lockdown at the end of Hillary, and I was done with my DPhil. Everything was fine, corrections fine. I was amazed how much I was able to be connected with students and with the staff, even though I was not officially at Bennett's anymore. I was an alumni, but also how the JCR was, keen on keeping in touch, and people were checking each other. So I think that was very special. I really appreciate as a transitional moment for myself, because I'm still very attached to the college, to everyone, and it was I think was a beautiful way to being to manage to say goodbye in a sort of slow motion process.
Oh, fantastic.
I think in a sense, Andrew, sorry to interrupt, I think a lot of our alumni will recognise that sense of sort of ongoing friendship, which is something that certainly the JCR has done a huge amount to promote, not only last year, but sort of ever since COVID happened. But even the finalists, I mean, we had little groups of them back as far as we were able to when they came to Oxford to pick up their stuff. And it's absolutely clear that that sense of ongoing friendship, even though you walk through the door for the last time and that green door shuts behind you, that the ongoing friendship, it's not something that's cut off. It's not you're cast out and back to Brazil and we never see you again.
Yeah.
So wonderful to see Thais and the cat.
Yeah, likewise.
But I think many of our alumni will recognise that. Will recognise that sense of ongoing friendship which the hall generates.
So if we quickly move from alumni, current students, to actually Rachel, the focus around who's coming next. So obviously the hall is busy playing its part within the sort of wider university's, access and inclusion work. And you're our representative around that from the student body. So just tell us a little bit about the things you're involved in and what we're hoping to do.
So Bennett's at the moment is currently, it wants to focus its outreach on faith schools because other bigger colleges have like a whole area that they have because of their large student body, but Bennett's is unable to do that because we're so small. But we've decided to focus on faith schools instead. So at the moment we're in association with 2 Catholic schools and 1 Muslim school, and it's still open to looking for more people. And we've also done a school talk last term with a school in Liverpool, which was a teacher was an alumni of Bennett's there as well. So a lot of it is just school-on-school contact, which COVID has made more complicated, but it's also shown that you can do school talks online as well, which I think also opens a lot of doors for outreach, that we can make it a lot more accessible. So I think that's something moving forward that will make the most of online outreach and having more and more people go to Bennett's events like through Zoom and things like that. Before pre-COVID, Bennett's was also planning, Exeter College runs a residential summer programme for Scottish students, which isn't currently covered by a college, Scotland. So Bennett's was planning to collaborate with Exeter College with this. So hopefully post-COVID that we can start getting more involved in that, and that can make some solid plans for next summer. And something very new going on is a primary school programme that we've come up with, that we might start going to primary schools in the local Oxford area, and not like direct, like this is how you apply to Oxbridge, but discussing less accessible university subjects, which is the type of subjects that you see at Benet. So things like classics and Oriental studies, which you don't see a lot in state schools. We think that if we start introducing these subjects, this can help students moving forward through secondary school and making decisions which may make it easier for them to go to uni in the future, because quite often outreach in year 12, most students have made the decision whether to go to uni or not, and they can't decide at that point to not go to uni because they've gone so far down a vocational route because that's what they've had pressure to do. So we just want to show all the options as early as possible. So that's the idea of this primary school thing that we're doing. And then, but we also, as part of the access and inclusion thing, we also want to make Bennett's as inclusive as possible. So we've made guides for freshers, not just for like different groups, so different faiths. So we have a Muslim and Christian guide, but we've also got LGBTQ, students with disabilities, things like that, which contains like specific advice, like where to buy certain types of food, or areas that are like wheelchair accessible and things like that. So these sort of things we hope will make the transition for freshers easier when they come. Yeah.
Oh, well, plenty going on there, absolutely. I don't know whether anyone wants to add anything to...
I could add that in this question of, obviously what Rachel's talking about is giving people the opportunity, who perhaps from schools where they wouldn't think of applying to Oxford, it's important to make a relationship so they do come and visit, because so many of them could perfectly well come and have all the qualifications. But then with the same elements about access and diversity comes with graduates. Having moved our graduates from 4 to over 40 this coming year, they're in a very wide range from the four corners of the world. Last year we had some first students we've had from Africa, from Nigeria, from South Africa, which again increased the diversity. It was a police commissioner from India. It's been really fascinating to see this diversity amongst the graduates, and also the range of subjects. We do a wider range of subjects with graduates than the undergraduates do. Lots of people doing the MBA, doing public policy, doing governance, doing forms of anthropology. So it's really a great diversity, and we think it's very exciting for the college to have this wide range rather than just the tradition of having people in humanities.
Yeah, fantastic. So maybe just building on that, we'll have a look at the future of St Benet's, I guess, and what we might see over the next decade. And one of the central features or determinants of that at the moment is perhaps the an evolution in the relationship with Ampleforth itself. So maybe Richard and Oswald, if you could perhaps talk to us about some of the things that are happening in the environment at the moment that will shape.
Well, would you like to start?
Richard, you.
Okay. Well, effectively, Bennett's was effectively Ampleforth on Thames for quite a lot of time, and I think that this can evolve without sacrificing the connection, the Benedictine connection, the Catholic tradition, and all the traditions that come with that. But we're very much involving this into a partnership where we have shared values and they have welcome students and interested, possibly from Benedictine Catholic communities, but other faith communities, to come and study with us. So that's an element whereby we're certainly not breaking with Ampleforth. We just want to make a new relationship with them, which will be very positive, particularly within the context of an interfaith dialogue, which is something which the Benedictines are strongly engaged in.
I think very much to underline that. I mean, I think the hall grew out of being Ampleforth's hall of studies, with the falling number of vocations in the monastic world in the West. That can look like a threat in many ways, but actually I think we're trying to see it as an opportunity, not only to build the hall a good future as a related but independent institution, but equally to make more of its potential as not only a house of studies for monastics, male and female from around the world, but equally to be a place of dialogue, genuine dialogue between the Catholics and people of other faiths and the other Christian denominations that are represented in the hall, of which there are many. So it's again building on that strong foundation that Ampleforth has established there, to provide something new and something vibrant within the university and within the monastic world, the Catholic world, and the faith world. So it's like the skin of an onion. I think there are various layers that we're working on developing, and that obviously needs support and imagination and creativity. So it's an exciting time.
Absolutely, no, indeed. Thais, just a quick question for you. I mean, if you have, say, one hope for the next decade of Bennett's, what would you like that to be?
I would encourage very much to keep the diversity aspect and the friendly community, the common table. I think it was, for me at least, was the best part of my experience in the college, and I truly believe we are becoming a place, not only a friendly place, but also a good place for academic network, academic development. That was something very important for grad students, as we have a whole different arrangement from the undergrads. The way our degrees work are very different. It's very much a lonely process, not attending classes all the time. So it's research mainly, and it can be very lonely. So I think if we keep, supporting grads to keep this connection with the community, with the undergrads in special, I think will be fantastic. I would say keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm just looking at the time. I don't think we've got any questions from attendees, but so maybe just sort of building on that as a final thing from everybody. In terms of taking Bennett's into the future, what's its sort of special characteristic that you think will enable it to achieve anything? And maybe if there's perhaps a special memory that you have from Bennett's. And Oswald, if perhaps if I could just ask you that one.
I suspect, rather like Thais, we've always been committed to helping people grow and find out who they are supposed to be. For myself, as a Catholic priest, I would say who God wants them to be. And I think that to maintain that sense of we are a community growing together in our search for the truth, growing together in our search for love, to love and support each other, and that sense of friendship. If we can carry that forward, I think that is still something, because of our size, that we do in a unique way within Oxford. That we provide not only the academic nourishment, the pastoral nourishment, the support to prayer, the support to exploration of questions of faith and humanity. I think that's something we do and do well. And I'm not sure anyone can quite compete with us on it. But we need help to be able to carry on doing that, I think.
Of course. Poppy, what's your closing comment around that?
I think from a sort of a JCR perspective, it's about trying to get the hall really noticed and raise the profile within the wider university collegiate system, because I think as a PPH and quite a small community, sometimes we can be overlooked, and that's certainly something that this JCR committee is really trying to work on, is to make more stronger, better connections with other colleges, and to really solidify our place within the university, and to sort of grow within that as students that are, although we are obviously part of St. Benet's, we are also part of the wider university as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Rachel, anything you want to throw in?
Similar to what Poppy said about the wider community, but also wider university, but it's also getting more involved with wider university projects like access, outreach and things like that, that just because Benet may not be able to have the resources to be able to establish his own thing, making more connections with other colleges, like with the Exeter College and the Scottish summer school, like things like that can really help get Benet students more involved in outreach and charity and making a real difference in the community and not just as a university.
Yeah, brilliant. And Richard, as master of this rather special ship, what would you? Is there anything you haven't said yet that you'd like to?
The fact that it is a small and caring community, which I think creates great friendships, doesn't mean that we don't have big ambitions. It does strike me that that the hall has changed dramatically in 10 years, and I don't think it should be aiming to get bigger, because I suspect that once you get much bigger, you then destroy that network. I think most colleges are over 600 now, and some of them are over 800. I don't think we want other people can do that. I think we don't want to compete in that game, but we do want to, I think, change our status so that we can build up an endowment, so that we can do what we do better. And very much with the help of the regents, I'm sure that we should be able to go for the endowment and go to apply and qualify for full college status within the university. We don't have to be big to qualify for that. The other thing is, I think, to continue to engage particularly with our St. Benet's Institute, in dialogue between the different faiths so that everybody knows about each other's faiths and values and can exchange, not just tolerate them and engage with each other. So, and I think that's an important element, and I think the St Benet's Institute is becoming very active, and I look forward to it being some part of our brand image as we move on into the next 10 years.
So, well, thank you, Richard. I'm sure 10 years ago and more that the word brand probably wouldn't have been used around Benet. So it's probably a good moment to wrap things up. And just to say that I hope that gives you a decent insight into Benet's recent past, certainly its present, and most definitely its future as well. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to the panel, and a big thanks actually to Christine, who helped piece all of this together and make sure the technology works. So yeah, a quick round of applause to Christine. And but thank you very much, and yeah, keep in touch with Benet because we want to keep in touch with you.